Yesterday was 65 degrees. Today, snow. To celebrate the 30-degree drop in temperature, I'm going to get in a festive mood and we're going to draw some holiday cards. Today I'm going to be using these Bristol cards from Strathmore. We've got a couple of different sizes. These are 5 by roughly 7 inches. Here we've got 3.5 by roughly 5. Now this is a smooth Bristol. I've been using smooth Bristol for an incredibly long time. For me, it just works really well with pencil, ink, colored pencils, markers. This is also an acid-free product, just meaning that our work is really going to hold up over time. In each pack, you get 6 cards. You also get 6 envelopes. Let's open this thing up. Let's see how graceful I can be right here. Not graceful. So here are the cards. They're folded really perfectly. That's awesome. Now, with the envelopes, one of the things that I noticed earlier is that when you pop these things around, you get this like really cool rough edge. And I just thought that was like a really sweet touch, particularly for the holiday cards that we're going to make today. In my work as an illustrator, I love 2 things, character design and children's books. For this project, I want to do something that's a little like unconventional with a holiday theme. So I'm going to start with a brainstorm or a theme list. The trick with a brainstorm list is to not hesitate, to not let your brain overcomplicate and overthink things. For me, I wanted to start with bunnies, but it was very easy to sort of flow to all of the rest of those words. Now, when we do our sketch phase here, I don't have to incorporate everything, but I might as well take whatever's in my brain and just throw it down on paper, just so I at least can reference it later and not forget about something. When I'm working on rough sketches, I want to do anything I can to eliminate the creative friction in my process. First of all, I'm going to start with paper. I'm going to use either a smooth paper or a smooth Bristol board. I just like how my hand sort of glides across the surface. And again, we're trying to eliminate friction here. The second thing is I'm just going to use some kind of like generic pen. I love sort of the permanence that an ink pen will provide in that process. But I also don't get precious about those lines because I can't erase anything. I always hold my pen back a little bit further in my hand and just sort of let the shapes kind of just find themselves. I think if I use like sort of my favorite pencil or my favorite brush pen, I'm probably going to be just a little bit too tight and a little bit too nervous that everything needs to be perfect. But again, these are rough sketches based on the brainstorm of the theming list that I came up with. These need to be loose, they need to have energy, and that's going to help inform the final piece. With my sketches wrapped up, there's a couple of things that is really standing out to me. I really like this bunny design with the hat, either this one or maybe this one with the ears kind of standing straight up. I like these goofy trees. I think they feel super fun. I had a lot of fun kind of thinking about this lantern with the little candle and the glow. I know that those Bristol cards handle markers like super well, and I think we can get some kind of cool gradients going. So maybe we incorporate that, and then maybe some of this snow or maybe some like interesting snowflakes that are kind of floating down. I think that could be really exciting for a holiday card. So let's give that a shot. Okay, so I've got the pencils done. Now on this one I used an H pencil because I like to ink over my pencil lines and I don't really like to smear things. This worked perfectly. There is something so satisfying about inking on smooth Bristol board. This surface just really loves ink. Now for me personally, I love to use brushes, brush pens, tech pens. I have thrown a complete variety of different inks, both waterproof, marker proof, and then some that aren't particularly great at this surface, and they have all worked really marvelously. One thing that I would recommend is letting the ink dry for a little bit and cure to the board before we move on to the alcohol marker phase. I just think with any wet media, if you don't let your ink completely dry or cure to the board, it's going to smear no matter how good that the paper is, but this is really good paper, so it's not going to take very long. I'm going to speed up the rest of the ink so you can see that part of the process. Then we're going to hurry along to the alcohol marker phase because really that's where this whole thing is going to come together. Next, I'm going to use a gray kneaded eraser to get rid of all that H pencil that we were talking about. And it's time to color. Real quick, I'm really impressed with how the ink from this side has not ghosted or is see-through on this other side. That is just really great. Sometimes I can ink really kind of heavy-handed, put tons of it on there, and I'm having absolutely no bleeding. That's awesome. My process with this one is really to slow down a little bit. So markers like to be built up in layers and stages. I like to saturate the paper with a base coat of tone and then start to build layers and shadows and hue and saturation and all sorts of fancy art words over top. Long story short though, you can reactivate markers once it's been put down. I will say though, the darker the marker, the harder it is to reactivate it. So my strategy is simply to start very light, work, build, and ultimately, as the paper starts to get saturated and you're applying some of those darker shades that maybe you were even kind of questioning putting on there, because the paper is pretty well saturated, things tend to blend and smear very easily, and it just sort of aids the easiness of the process, which, frankly, for me, like, let's make it easy. One thing I struggle with almost every art piece is the ugly phase. Particularly with marker, it's really hard to get like good even base coats or second coats or even like 10th coats with markers sometimes, regardless of the brand and like how good they are. I often have to remind myself that the more that I work the paper, the more that I saturate the paper, things will start to turn out and start to look the way that I want. But there is always this like ugly phase that makes me cringe and sort of like get really tight and anxious. And I just remember I have to work through it. A good strategy with that, particularly with markers, is to work in small, even circles. You're able to get just a much smoother tone and gradient with everything. You get good coverage with your markers and pens. That has helped me not freak out a whole lot, and it has helped me push past through the ugly phase multiple times. A second ago, you saw me use colored pencils, which is a thing that's like completely out of my comfort zone. I am much more of a watercolor or marker kind of dude, but once I got the base layer of marker down, the colored pencil just kind of worked really easy. And I don't know, it just felt like it worked. To finish the piece off, I'm using some opaque white paint just to really pop these snowflakes and just make everything sort of come to life. I feel like it's those final flourishes, that little bit of extra love that you put into a piece. That's where the magic really starts to come out. Now, I probably could have stopped here a little bit ago on the 4,000th snowflake, but 4,001 snowflakes just sort of seems like it's a better fit. And here it is, the final piece. What a joy to work on. It's really neat to be able to share my creative process all the way from the sketching and brainstorming phase, obviously down to the final piece. I love smooth Bristol board. I also love the fact that this is in card form. It's really easy to open up, make a heartfelt note, send it to somebody with one of those really cool envelopes that I shared earlier. Also, I noticed that the majority of the snowflakes that I painted are just now on the table, and they are going to be there probably for eternity. I do have more of these Bristol cards, and I'm kind of wondering what we should put on these. I'm kind of thinking like a holiday-themed garden gnome, or maybe an ice skating bear. Maybe an ice skating bear who's eating a garden gnome, who's holiday-themed. I'm open to suggestions, and you should put some of those into the comment section, and perhaps I can draw one, two, or all of them. Beyond that, my name's Anthony Wheeler. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll see you real soon.